Hey, everybody, check this cool picture out from Morocco. Yeah! All right, so I'm just starting this with a nice light wash. I really want this picture to be all about the shadows, so I'm hoping that the shadows end up nice and strong as I paint. And I just want this to be really loose, not much there. It's almost going to be a bit vignette-y in as far as it's not going to be completely resolved by the end. So this wash, I'm just layering with a bit of, colour-wise, I think it was a tiny bit of raw sienna and a little bit of buff titanium, Daniel Smith's buff titanium. But that's a bit opaque, so you've got to be really careful with the amount of it that you use. Don't use too much. And just strengthening up little areas of warmth. This is all about just getting some texture, getting some colour in, and not doing too much in the way of strong stuff. Now, you can kind of get away with anything here. You just throw it around, lots of water, splatter, bloody spit on it if you like. That's a bit gross though, if you spit on it, so you might upset someone. Yeah, I think when I did this, I just noticed that the sky was just lightening up too much. And when you see the end result, you'll see that it's a good thing I went back in just to strengthen that a little bit. Yeah, just getting first wash, texture. I think I'll wait for it to dry off a bit. These tissues are always good just to put on, lift them up, and it'll leave some marks behind. It'll leave some texture. Just messing around with some tissue stuff. Dried it off, splatter, all with the intent to gain texture or create texture. And as long as, because these shadows are going to be nice and strong, as long as what's going on there now is nice and light, you'll be okay. You can kind of get away with anything. What I really like to do here is just splatter, put some water down, and just let it go. Just let it run, let it do what it wants to do, and you're fine. And it's all just creating stuff for later on. We're not too worried about making it all pretty and nice. Harry Hairdryer came out there, so that's good. Let's start with the shadows. So I think when I started, like this brushstroke here, these little bits, they're a little bit cool. And they end up being a little bit weak as well. So it's just one of those things that when you paint on the go. You paint with your painting, you're looking at that going, it's fairly watery. I know it's going to end up quite light by the end. So I'm just putting little bits of stuff in there. So you can see it was quite cool. Just dropped a little bit of warmth in there. I think it was based around ultramarine and a bit of orange, burnt sienna, that kind of stuff for the warmth. And I'm really conscious of making the shadows some warm, some cool. You know, I don't want the shadows to be a single uniform flat color. It's one mistake you can really make quite easily with the good old shadows is you just mix up a color, you paint it flat, and it just looks dull and lifeless like my hair. All I'm doing is focusing on, when I'm looking at the reference, I'm just looking at the little bits of dark shadow here and there. That's all I'm wanting to look at the moment, just to see, observe what's going on, observe what's dark, what's not, and just try and get the approximate shape in. I'm not I'm not looking to make things perfect. I'm not looking at recreating this photo because it's a great photo in itself. It doesn't matter. It doesn't need recreating. We're just using it as inspiration for a painting. That's it. And while this is a very specific place in Morocco, I'm not looking at it like that. I'm just looking at it as a series of shadows and shapes. That's all I'm doing. And if you can do that, even when you draw the picture out, the more you can trust that side and think about the process in that way, the happier you'll be, because it'll take far less hassle to create the thing. You can see here I've gone fairly warm in the shadow to start with, and it's because I know this shadow here is quite strong as well, so added a bit of coolness back in there with some blue. And you can see when things mix on the paper, when you let things mix and merge on the page, and just things are just much more interesting to look at. Your shapes are much more interesting, your shadows are more interesting, everything's more interesting when you mix it on the paper. So you've got to do that as much as you can in painting in general. Now this is probably the strongest side of shadow that we can see here, so just letting it all mix and merge. Consistency of paint wise, all through this shadow we're probably looking at coffee to milky consistency, and we just really need to make sure we get things straight. And that's all good. And I know that all this will come together a lot more once all the little bits go on over the top. And that's to come. So this video is actually at double speed. So it's all it is. Just you're seeing it paint twice as fast as I would. Of course, I'm sure you could have figured that out by the fact that I said double speed. But you don't dilly-dally. You don't dawdle. Don't sit there and overthink everything. And most importantly, when it comes to putting the paint on the paper, do that pretty quickly. I mean, in all fairness, you can think about it for as long as you like. You can think, and that's fine. But when it comes to painting, putting the paint on the paper, do that pretty quickly and pretty confidently and directly, and you'll be okay. Your paintings will have a nice, fresh appeal to them. And as far as gear that I'm using, I know a lot of people are interested in that. I'm using the this one right now is an Escoda Perla. Nothing groundbreaking there. The thing that I really like about them is that they've got a nice point, yes, but it's a long tapered point, so it's you can draw with it really nicely if you need to. But it's got a bit of a belly on it, so it holds a little bit of paint, but it's not, you wouldn't paint big washes with these, I don't think. But I really like these brushes, and also for the most part, for the washier stuff, which you can see there on the left, is the Neef Thomas Shaler signature. They're signature mops. They're they're a synthetic mop that I think I've got a review on my channel here of them. But they're really nice, and they don't cost the earth. And I use a hell of a lot of them. I used a lot of their sizes, and I can't get enough of them. They're fantastic brushes. There's also a Princeton brush making its way in there, and the Princeton stuff's really nice as well. Just try it all. See what you reckon. That's the go. As far as paints go, I'm using a lot of Daniel Smith, a lot of Schminke, and a lot of Mayberry Blue, actually. The Italian paints, they're very nice as well. Very, very nice. But, it's just paint with whatever you can get your hands on. That's the best way to look at it. It's the best way to think about it. You don't have to get obsessed by materials. They're just tools to do the job. But yeah, don't worry about them too much. If anything, the paper I'm using, if anything, paper is the most important. I've said it like 1,000 million times, gazillion, trillion, quadrillion times even. That paper is it when it comes to materials. A lot of people obsess about brushes and paint because they're a bit sexier. Paper's not as sexy, but I think it is. And it's far more important to have good quality paper than it is to have good quality in anything else. So if you have to skimp somewhere, skimp on paint and brushes and get good paper. The paper I'm using is the Baohong medium texture, sort of cold pressed, and it's fantastic. I love it, and it's fairly economical too. So go to seniorart.com.au for the Baohong paper and the Neef brushes as well. Daniel Smith, and they've got heaps of stuff, anything. So really good stuff. I'm still just getting these shadows. This shadow on the left, this one that I'm doing right now, I really wanted to make quite strong, and there's not enough pigment in there at the moment. I think I end up glazing it later on and working it a little bit to get it to come to life like I wanted to. But yeah, I wanted that to be nice and dark in there. And it ends up being okay. It's just, yeah, I would have liked it to be a little more direct. That's all. Now, as far as let's have a look. As far as this building on the left goes, in the corner, I just wanted to get it in nice and simply. It's just there as a compositional detail. It kind of moves us through the picture a bit. And with compositions like this, where you're looking at a static scene, you need to have lots of little directional lines leading you throughout the composition. So this leads us in from the top left. If you're coming down that way, it goes along. There's those little zigzaggy bits on the right, the bottom right, and there's this this concrete sort of pylon thing looking at us, going in from the front up to the middle ground. So there's lots of little directional aspects leading us everywhere, which is great. These shadows are just getting stronger and stronger, which is good. Now I think I cool this little building down a little bit in spots too, just to take the harsh warmth off it anyway. But that's cool. There we go. It's all dried off. Now I realised that I just wanted to glaze everything a little bit. I didn't, only so that light on the top of that little ledge leading us into the picture, that's got to be different. It's got to be lighter than the stuff in the background, and it just wasn't. So carefully just glazing here, and you'll see that I cut around that. And it's literally just to get that tone separated. Just get that separated there, that's all. And if I had my time again, I would keep that bit at the front a lot lighter still, probably almost white paper. But that's okay. You live and you learn. You paint with your picture, and away you go. You get stuck in and get on with your day. You don't obsess over it. You don't worry about it. This is just painting pictures. We're not splitting atoms or curing diseases. So don't stress. It's all good. Let's have a look. Just texture and, bits and pieces. just trying to get it all separate. And it's hard with watercolor because it dries off lighter. You know, it's not like it's an easy medium to start with, but then it goes and does the whole drying shift, and it's like, it's just not fair. What are you doing to us? It's difficult. The reason, or the way to get your head around it, is to paint more, paint. Make a shit ton of mistakes. That's all you need to do to get better. Just make a mistake after mistake after mistake, and you keep going. Keep painting, and you'll be right. You'll come out the other side much better for it. So here's where things start to get a little bit tricky, but fun. So this is what we're looking at, going, well, I've got a bit of thicker paint on the brush now. Thicker, stronger paint, darker paint, and just putting little bits of info. In the reference, there's little adornments and patterns and all kinds of fancy stonework and things like that, which is fine, but I'm definitely not a fan of painting every single thing completely accurately and making it look like an illustration. I want a representation. I want a hint of this sort of stuff. So the way I kind of do this is just put all these little marks in there, but I'll kill it off with a tissue. Sort of kill it so it's not so in your face. And that's, to me, it's the best way to do it. And you've got to have faith that the end result will be okay, because it's not going to really make sense until it all comes together at the end. So you've got to keep your eyes on the prize in that respect. So don't get bogged down in every little brushstroke you're making, thinking you have to make this brushstroke perfect. God damn it! Don't worry about that. It'll never happen. So what you do need to do is just keep your brush dancing around and go for it. That's all you're doing. Yeah, get some of these little windows in. They'll read as little windows and little indentations. You know, no problem at all. Just trust it. And one thing that I've been really harping on about with students about recently is observation. And I know that sounds stupid, because in order to draw something or paint something, we need to look at our subject and see what we're doing. No shit, Sherlock, I get that. But a lot of students fail to observe. That's different than looking at it. Observation to me is a bit more of an academic exercise. I think you've got to look at something, see it, and go, yep, that's where it is. That's just a line. You kind of forget what it is. Don't worry about what the actual object is. You're looking at it for its shape and its line. Where is it going? And that's what you have to start to do. You'll start to, as you walk around the street and you're looking at things, objects, potential paintings, even potential scenes for a painting. When you do this enough and you get competent at it, you will start seeing things as blocks of color and blocks of tone and shapes. You know, you look at a lamppost, and instead of seeing the lamppost, you'll see there's a block of tone that's lighter, and that's a triangle. And you know, then you'll start seeing things like that. Once you get to that, you can kind of simplify anything. Especially watercolor, simplification is the ultimate. So you need to be able to do it. And it just comes down from observing and not overthinking what it is you're painting. Don't overthink the object itself. All you're doing is thinking about what tone is where, what shapes are where. That's it. That's all we're after. That's all we're interested in for watercolor. And we're creating an impression of a scene. So you can see now that the other side is done with all the little dots and dashes and stuff, that it all kind of makes sense. It's all making sense. It's a pretty decent representation of the subject. And I'm starting to look for things like the obviously that distance there, it's a bit of a hillside, or not hillside, a countryside, just flat land. But I didn't want to make anything of it, so I just left it as a flat shape, a flat line, just whatever. And start just keeping on embellishing little dots and dashes here and there, just to make things stand out a little more. Overall, the scene, I keep squinting my eyes, I'm looking at things, and things are jumping out at me that I need to sort out. This being one of them. As I was saying before, that I end up messing with this a little bit. It ends up okay in the end, but it was a bit of a mission to try and get it right, to be honest. I just wanted it to read, I didn't care what it was, I just wanted it to read stronger than it was. And probably cooler. I think I end up getting rid of a fair bit of that orange tone there. Nice and strong. I think we're going in there with pretty much neutral tint there at the moment, at that point. And just feeling my way around, looking at different aspects of everything, seeing what needs to be strengthened and what's okay as it is. And that's cool. Just a few little marks here and there on that right hand side is good. I've long since I've stopped looking at the reference photo ages ago, and I'm looking at my painting, what works with the painting, what doesn't. And if you listen to it hard enough, your painting will tell you exactly what it's needing in order to come to life and be successful. So it's a good thing. You've got to listen to your painting and paint with it. That shadow there I was finding was just a little bit weak, that first one that I did. And overall, it's going to settle down to be nice, but shadows, when you're painting shadows like this, it can be a little problematic as far as getting them to be the right strength to start with. Because the last thing you want to have to do is what I'm doing now. So going over things and potentially messing them up and overworking them. I'm being really careful not to overwork. So when I'm putting paint down, I'm feathering it out and making sure that it's pretty nice. And a couple of birds, why not? And just starting to come together. I think I just dried that off, so that's all dried now, so things have come back to the field a bit, and I've just got a bit of opaque paint. I think that's a Holbein Jaune Brilliant #1, and it's kind of a creamy yellow, quite opaque, so you don't want to do too much of it. But the good thing is, in this sort of scene where the subject is quite bitty itself, if you know what I mean, then a few little dots and dashes of opaque paint is not going to be a problem. Yeah, a few just little bits just catching the light, that's all it is. Just catching the light. But when you're painting with opaque paint, whether it's this or a bit of white at the end or something, the biggest mistake you can make is to paint objects with it. Your best bet is to just use them as highlights, dots and dashes. And I'm just going in there I will go in with a little bit of white paint in a second, just to add some proper highlights. Ooh, there's a couple of little bits. That's still the Jaune Brilliant, I believe. Now I think I've got the white. This is a white gouache straight from the tube. Always make sure you get it straight from the tube. Don't mix it up, it just dries off too light otherwise. Little bits. yeah, it wasn't too much to be said for it. It was just a nice little scene. I think it's worked out quite nicely, and I think it's settled down once the everything dried and settled. It looks really nice, and you'll see that in the photo that I'll put up at the end here. Take the tape off. That always helps with watercolors. You should get that little instant frame, and that's always nice. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed that. If you can, please check out my Facebook group. If you join my Facebook group, it is under Tony White Watercolour Community. My Instagram, which is Tony White Watercolour. My YouTube channel here, obviously. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and share amongst your friends, your family, your enemies, whoever you like. That'd be tops. Thank you very much. That was shit hot fun, and I will see you all very, very soon. Thank you. Bye bye.